for proposing this talk and for accepting our invitation. I hope next time we can arrange a personal meeting in Lisbon. I think you should come to visit Lisbon as well, because after 2 years of the pandemics, it's time for us to gather. Although this way of communication is also good because it allows us to be in different places, and that is also good. So, Cecilia, do you want to...
Yes, also, yeah, boa tarde a todos. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar that is organized by our research line in environment and Anthropocene. That is a research line of the Center for Administration and Public Policy of the University of Lisbon. And well, today we are really pleased to have with us Dr. Arthur Sniegon, who will talk about a subject that is, well, at the same time fascinating as are elephants and great apes, and also very sad given the problem and the situation that elephants and great apes have in Africa. I thank you again very much for this presentation today, Arthur. And now I think that my colleague Rui is going to do a brief introduction of our speaker. So Rui, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so after this brief explanation and an introduction of our research line in the University of Lisbon, I'm going to introduce you, Arthur, although I think you should speak for yourself. So Arthur is a biologist. He studied in Charles University in Prague, Czech Republic. Fortunately, I was one of his supervisors in his bachelor thesis. He did a very interesting work about the impacts of deforestation and habitat fragmentation in chimpanzee communities. It was his main focus. And from very early ages, Arthur is engaged with these conservation aspects. So he's also an activist working with some NGOs, and he creates his own NGO called Save the Elephants. And he's working on that for a while now. He's very committed to conservation, to try to make positive change in our world. And this is a fantastic experience he's having. Difficult as well, as he will show, because the theme and the topic of this talk is frightening at some point, because it's about poaching and trafficking, animal trafficking. So, and we need to reflect about this type of threat to these animals that they are already endangered in some cases. So, Arthur, the spotlight is all yours. You can speak freely, as long as you want, more or less 45 minutes, and then we'll interact with you, posing you questions, and this, and of course you can make questions to ourselves as well. Okay. And thank you once again for being here.
Obrigado, Rui, and I'm really happy to be here. And to see you after so many years, so when we are distant. I will share my screen, and please confirm me if it works. Desktop. And now I would like you to see the first image. Is it so?
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. As Rui introduced me, so I will not say too many words longer about my past history. And I will directly move to the topic, which is Central Africa, which is Central African wildlife and its exploitation, in many and most cases illegal exploitation, meaning poaching and different sorts of trafficking and using on illegal markets. I will mainly focus my attention to elephants and to primates, more specifically great apes, which are of course one of the most spectacular and most emblematic species, which can focus people's attention to other conservation topics and to protect other species as well, which is actually my ultimate goal. Although the name of our small Czech NGO, which wants to expand and grow bigger, is Save Elephants. We focus on many more aspects than only the elephants. As Rui mentioned, my initial interest on the university were primates in fragments, and surprisingly, after 10 years, after finishing this bachelor thesis, after 10 years in Africa, I'm now in a moment that I deal very, very closely with primates and specifically chimpanzees in fragments. And I will move back to this topic at the end of my presentation. So if you are more interested about primates and chimps, just wait a bit. One of the first information I got from Central Africa about the huge crisis, which I then later decided to try to change or be part of the solution, was this book of Dale Peterson with pictures and contributions of Karl Ammann. And this is a shocking witnessing about killing great apes, mainly in the Cameroon, Congo, Gabon region for meat. But now, before going back to the apes, I will talk more about elephants. Actually, since last year, there are 2 species of elephants recognized in Africa. The nominate species Loxodonta africana, the bush elephant, which certainly everybody knows from the safaris or zoos. And then this forest elephant in English, Loxodonta cyclotis, which unfortunately belongs to the critically endangered category by IUCN, and the population of these elephants are some higher, tens of thousands of individuals, mainly in the Congo Basin and some remaining populations in Western Africa as well, while there are approximately 300,000 bush elephants on the entire continent. Unfortunately, for a traveler who wants to see elephants in the Central African region, you very often happen to be at the spots like that. You don't see living elephants anymore, but you find carcasses, sometimes in huge numbers. Just after finishing my bachelor thesis, I decided I would like to find some possible options for myself and for my peers and my colleagues, how to be helpful. So I ventured out on my bicycle to Central Africa. I decided for the bicycle because of the rough terrain and abilities to cross rivers and so on. Later on, later that year, I had to got my inflatable boat shipped because the bicycle cannot go everywhere. So I was traveling on an amphibian way through the Atlantic coast of Gabon, Congo, the interior of these countries in the Sangha region and other places in Central Africa. And my first goal was to understand what is going on actually. So everything concerning hunting, or more specifically poaching, was in my focus. I accompanied local hunter-gatherers, like here, the Bayaka pygmies in Central African Republic, on their traditional, very, I would say, sustainable hunt, using ancient methods like this handmade net for the net hunting in the forest, which only it doesn't threaten the forest as a whole, because you require many hunters, including male, female, children, like here, like this woman. And after a whole day of hunting, if you're lucky, you get one duiker or a few porcupines, something like that. Those rare, those arboreal animals or other which are more endangered, more prone to be threatened by poaching, are usually omitted by this type of hunting. When in Chad, I joined conservationists from the African Parks Network, like here, the Zakuma National Park, and we focused on the tracking of elephant movements via collaring. So this is just a immobilized elephant sleeping, or not actually sleeping, just not being able to move while we fix the radio collar. And I've seen savanna, or I mean bush elephants in the wild, and unfortunately also bush elephants in the captivity, like here. This is one of the orphaned which we tried to rescue after a huge poaching massacre in southern Chad. We are taking care of that elephant baby for several weeks before he eventually passed away because of some injuries and stress, for sure. I understood that the problem is very, very deep and very difficult to be solved. And by coincidence, I hit on a group of people which you might know. These are activists around Ofir Drori, which is an Israeli activist who created in 2002 or three, a first organization in Central Africa directly focusing on fighting the illegal market with apes and with ivory and other illegal products. So this man created the so-called Eagle Network, and already at the very beginning of my adventures, because at the beginning it was really an adventure, I happened to meet traffickers, poachers, this illegal ivory, and with a great portion of chance and good guidance, I already succeeded to bring about some first arrests during that first expedition. And this entirely changed my life, because I understood that even one individual can be somehow helpful. So with my friends, mainly from the Czech Republic and other places, we created this organization, SafeElephants.org, which is spread through countries such as Chad, Cameroon, and Congo, mainly Congo, Brazzaville. And we try to be helpful where sometimes big structures or big organizations cannot reach, for capacity reasons, for security reasons, for just the reason that they are not aware about the problem, because they have much more, administrative burden. We are a group of volunteers and people who partner with different organizations. We don't limit our scope to to one region, one area, or one group of people. So we have sometimes very, very up-to-date information about poaching, and we try to do our best. Now, still talking about elephants, and now about two species, forest and bush elephants mixed. You can see the map of the approximative appearance in Africa, which doesn't show you the abundance of the elephants, of course. And at the left, you can see how it sometimes still looks like when the law is not enforced. This is a Kinshasa a few years ago, city center, daylight, a few meters from the main police station, and just by a regular visit, there were hundreds of kilo of mainly elephant ivory, hippo ivory, leopard skins, and other. So the situation is sometimes very grim, but I will tell you also about some of the successes. All right, yeah. Now, do you hear me, or do you hear the sound of the video, please?
Oh, we only hear you.
Okay.
Not the video.
Okay, I didn't hear your reply, but it's just a short video which I will skip, which shows you the volume of of the items sold on the market in Kinshasa. And I also happened to film one of the main buyers, which were people from China. And now, is my sound back? I hope so.
Yes.
Thank you. As you can see, even on these carcasses, poachers, in most cases, only focus on the ivory. They remove it either by cutting off the whole face, because it's easier. Sometimes when the ivory or the elephant is smaller, they succeed of digging it out this way. And the remainings of the meat remains usually intact because of the reason of security of the poachers, the fact of the logistics, they cannot transport the meat, but also by the economic fact, because the ivory is precious. It's an item which can be transported, unlike meat, and especially tons of meat. So usually the carcasses go intact and disappear in the wild, which is the case of Central Africa. It might vary in other places. And this graphic representation of the IA investigations shows that most of the ivory goes directly to the Far East through some transit countries like the Arabic Emirates, Spain, or even Czech Republic, actually. Already on the African ground, when seizing or arresting some people, you are well aware about the final destination of the product. So you can see chopsticks, buddhas, and other Asian items. And because of the high price, which I will not reveal right now, because we agreed with other conservationists that it's not great to share the exact rates and pricing. And second reason, it wouldn't be up to date. You know, it varies along the African continent and in time, so the figure wouldn't be accurate. But the trend is now, because of the COVID and other changes, very unpredictable. Sometimes it drops, sometimes it rises, but it is still very high, and it is a very luring incentive for the local hunter. And I spoke to this particular hunter who presented me that piece of ivory, which comes from a young elephant, and he admitted that he willingly killed that elephant for this ivory, because it was worth these few grams, it was worth the bullet, and it was worth the efforts. And then this is the biggest elephant massacre which I have witnessed. At least 89 killed elephants, probably during a single poaching incident made by Sudanese poachers, of course, with local assistance, probably in southwestern Chad. And to accompany my personal experience with some figures, this is the so-called pike, the proportion of illegal killed elephants in Africa, both species combined, and it shows that during the peaking crisis in 2011-12, the rate was up to 7 or 8 elephants out of 10 killed elephants were killed by people. And the trend was even worse in Central Africa, where 9 of 10 found carcasses had evidence of human intervention, I mean, of poaching. Fortunately now, after 20 years of such monitoring, the figures are lower than any time before. So it's less than 4 or 3 elephants on the African continent as an average. And this is maybe partially because of the COVID and closed borders, etc., etc. But of course, it might turn very soon because of the deteriorating economic and security situation in many parts of Africa, also because of the war in the Russian war and other reasons. some links to articles and surveys about savanna elephants and now forest elephants, showing a very huge decline. And a wonderful source of information, which is not up to date right now, but I think there are some updates, is this one. So feel free to check it out. It shows you different different methods and styles of poaching and trafficking in different parts of Africa, because what I will tell you and present you now may be valid for Congo Basin or Chad, but not for Kenya or South Africa. And now I will slightly move from the elephants to other topics and be more specific about our concrete actions and regions where we work. I will move to the Congolese rainforests, and we will see the impact of humans, which of course need to feed themselves. So these are some of the images from our camera traps showing a poacher, and a few days after a chimpanzee at the very same spot in northern Congo. So great apes, including humans in Central Africa, share the very same environment, and very often it doesn't end up well for the chimpanzees and gorillas. Very often people now ask me whether I'm aware about some reciprocal danger, meaning for people, that if there are some chimpanzees stealing or killing babies. I have not this information from Congo, Cameroon, or Gabon. If you have, it would be very interesting information for me. But so far, I'm not aware about that. The crisis which great apes face, it's broader than only great apes. It is the bushmeat crisis, and this is an example from the main road in the Republic of Congo between the main two cities, Brazzaville and Pointe-Noire. This is a paved road, very well made by Chinese company a few years ago. And the forested parts are like a supermarket for bushmeat lovers. Unfortunately, most of the population of Congo and the entire region are bushmeat lovers. The traditional hunting, of course, comes from generations ago, and even nowadays, people dwelling in the urban centers, and the rate of urbanization is very high in those countries. It's over like 60%, maybe even more than this in Gabon, 60% in Congo. There is a big city population, but still this city population depends broadly on this hunting in forests, which is illegal. It is not illegal to kill such a small duiker for local consumption in the village, in most cases, unless you are in the middle of the national park, but it is illegal to commercialize this bushmeat. But this is going on. As you see on the daylight, minister cars passing by, police officers passing by, either ignoring it or participating by, of course, getting the bushmeat. This is also a very interesting picture, because it shows you, and maybe Rui and other people who have experience from pristine rainforests would miss something, and you miss diurnal primates. You miss colobuses and genons and others. And indeed, I know this particular place very, very well. I'm a few times a year there, and I rarely see a diurnal monkey. And it's probably because of the reason that they are the first at, to be wiped out. And because of the proximity to the road, those populations, and not even talking about apes, are probably already gone. And surprisingly, there are other primates which are targeted. Here on the right from the big duiker, you see two potos, Prodicticus poto, the nocturnal primate, which is only like 1 kilo, 1.5 kilo, nothing. And it has to be shot by a bullet, which is quite precious, for a local hunter. But given that there are no bigger primate species, given that people passing by here are not poor villagers who pay small money. Those people passing on these main routes are very often, as I said, ministers or entrepreneurs, people in big SUVs, and they have money. And the price of the bushmeat is quite high in this particular spot, and people have motivation to kill even those small primates. I've not seen it anywhere else, only here. So as I said, this is like a rural situation. This is something which might be probably sustainable in some areas of the local communities. Probably this small boy will not wipe up the whole population of the Ghana, but other species, of course, like these Western lowland gorilla are more in danger. This is just a representation that indeed the bushmeat hunting as generally and especially for meat is a very big problem for big mammals. Aside other like habitat loss, livestock. I will probably talk about the habitat loss in Central Africa, so I will move to this topic a bit later. Now just a short sentence about pangolins, which is also one of the taxa in my attention. Very endangered in Africa. You rarely see them in normal bushmeat markets, and it's only on some places where they are still in healthy numbers, or maybe not healthy numbers, but at least numbers where you can regularly see them. Not in the wild, unfortunately, but on the bushmeat market. And this is one of our seized pangolin, female. And we are so lucky that it was just a few hours after she gave birth of the newborn. They were still connected by the umbilical cord, and we really released that mother and baby back to the wild. Pangolins are very difficult to be kept or bred in the captivity, so we hope that the biggest and the only thing we can do for them is to release them as soon as possible. So pangolins, primates in Central Africa or in Africa are those taxa which are most threatened by direct human hunting. Other groups of animals are and maybe more in danger by other reasons, like human encroachment, agriculture, diseases, and so on. These two taxa are definitely mostly threatened by poaching. I'm not a researcher, so I will not give you some of my personal data from my series and researchers. I participate on some researchers. I'm able to organize or fix or help other researchers to come in, which is an invitation for Rui and others. But myself, I'm more in the conservation as an activist, and trying to use the information we got from researchers and to explore options how to mitigate those threats. One of the main project I was participating was the sniffer dog program. The sniffer dogs, mainly the Belgian Malinois, Belgian shepherds, which were introduced to Congo either from Israel and from the Czech Republic, were great help in our efforts. And we started that project in Congo Brazzaville in 2014. The dogs are still active. Not this one, unfortunately, because this particular Titan, one of our heroes, passed away because of the trypanosomia, the tsetse fly transmitted disease. But we have offspring of these dogs, so there is already a third generation, second litter in Africa, born in Congo, which helps us in fighting the illegal trade. We use those dogs mainly on the trafficking hubs, like main road checkpoints. There were attempts to use them in the port in Pointe-Noire, at the airport in Brazzaville and Pointe-Noire, which hopefully will happen one day. But right now, because of the organization, administrative obstacles, we are mainly active on the ground. I don't manage these units anymore since like 3 years ago, but they are still active in hands of African Park Networks, Ozala Kokowa, and in the hands of the Jane Goodall Institute, the Chimpunga Reserve in southern or coastal Congo. And these are just some of the examples where dogs helped us to sniff out ivory, but much more often on like a daily basis, multiple times on the daily basis when in the field, bushmeat. Different type of bushmeat, smoked bushmeat, fresh bushmeat, like here, those pangolins or tortoises. Here, this was our first arrested Chinese national who was trying to traffic out of the country ivory, an ivory bracelet, and some pangolin scales for medicinal purposes. Of course, when being in the field with our dogs, sometimes we didn't even need their noses because the scale of the bushmeat trade is so immense that sometimes you meet 6 poachers or organizers of the poaching in one Toyota, along with 400 kilo of semi-dried or semi-smoked duikers, pangolins, monkeys, rodents, and others, chevrotains. The estimation is that there are up to 1 to 5 million of tons of bushmeat being extracted from the Congolese rainforest per year, which is a lot. Given that the Congo Basin, being the second rainforest basin on Earth after the Amazon, is not really densely inhabited. The biggest urban centers are actually at the edges of the rainforest. It's the Kinshasa, which is at the edge. It is Douala, Yaoundé, Bangui, which is also at the edge with the savanna or shrubland regions. And unfortunately, the forests still serve as the main source of protein, which might be facultative. And I agree that some sort of hunting should be allowed for the human needs living in those areas, but of course not for 15 million of people living in Kinshasa. So some pictures from our dog project to make it happier. First anniversary of our first litter with our Congolese handlers. We used dogs imported and later then bred in Congo and trained by international professional trainers, but we use local male and female dog handlers, which had to learn Hebrew or Czech commands. So these are our heroes. And probably I don't see the next picture, if I remember well. This is just a reminder, of course, for you that this is not only about animals, but it's also about human lives and health. You probably know, but just a few pictures showing that the hygiene or like this security is not really well managed by in the wildlife trade. Even in the COVID time, this is like a COVID time, peaking pandemics. They have social distancing in the buses. They have masks, but this is a net full of living fruit beds being transported from the islands to the city center of Brazzaville. And I moved back to my colleagues from the Eagle Network. This is a few years old article, 2015, when the Ebola was at its peak in Guinea and Sierra Leone and others. And my colleagues remember that during the peaking Ebola crisis, they seized 2 tons of bushmeat, and nobody was taking care about the dangers or risks And this is something which I see very often in Africa. People, of course, they know about the dangers. Some of them die, or they have in fresh memory some of the Ebola outbreaks in Congo, Brazzaville, or Gabon. They know that it's real, but probably they are not 100% convinced about the origins of the disease. And even if yes, they believe that it will not be their case, of course, and they're optimistic, and they just I understand them, because when you are poor, when you don't have too many options, and when the system allows you to carry out with your traditional activities and traditional source of meat, which tastes good in most cases, you really don't have any motivation to change your way of life, and you don't have the means. So things which I now try to encourage is the change of options, how to get the protein, and how to manage the landscape. Now, with more focus on the apes, I will start by the pet trade. These are my older pictures from Gabon, actually, showing some mandrill babies attached in the middle of the village. Of course, this is a byproduct, in most cases, byproduct of the bushmeat hunting, where infants and little individuals, which are not big enough to be killed for meat and not big enough to be too dangerous, are sometimes kept as a pet. But unlike South American indigenous population, African or Central Africans, they don't really have the nature of keeping animals for their own pleasure, not in the villages. Sometimes in the cities, when you are well situated, very often if you are a politician or military guy and you have a piece of land, you want to have a chimpanzee or a mandrill or something, but it requires some funds and some space. So the keeping pets is usually reserved for those who have some means, and the usual average rural population doesn't have any time, doesn't have time and options to keep those animals. So it's usually a source of incomes for them. They try to sell them further. As I also witnessed in Gabon, like 10 years ago already, these images are fortunately almost non-existing these days, because of the work of the Eagle Network and other agencies, and the continuing awareness campaigns and seizing operations. It would be very, very risky for the traffickers to try to sell, and for the owners to keep those endangered and protected animals. So fortunately, chimpanzee on the chain is not such a big problem nowadays. It appears time to time, but quite rarely. For those interested in the illegal trade and hunters, actually, I strongly recommend this book of Ofir Drori, the leader of the Eagle Network, The Last Great Ape, which shows his personal story. Or you can consult the web page, where they are very transparent. So on the monthly basis, you can be informed about successes and failures. Now, talking about some successes, and also in partnerships with the Eagle Network, with the LAGA organization in Cameroon, I will show you I will explain you shortly about another aspect of ape killing, which is trade in their body parts. Probably more research would be needed, and probably more action in the first row, but more research would be needed to understand more what is how it actually is. Because in the past, as I said, the apes were hunted either for bushmeat, and then the byproducts were the babies, and you don't really see it very often in the urban centers, because it's risky, and it's people change their mindset, and most of the people nowadays probably would refuse eating a chimpanzee or gorilla. And if you are interested about that, I would recommend to see some of the researches of WCS in those regions, which have year-long researches about about human preferences and so on. So bushmeat of gorillas and chimpanzee baby on the chain, it's not very often to be seen today. But at the other hand, we see a rise of in trade of those ape skulls. Here on the bed in my hotel room, you see the trafficker who is presenting me some little primate skulls plus 2 gorillas, which are the big one and the light one, and then the 1 chimpanzee. This is the silverback gorilla male skull, which he presented me, and he offered me to get. Again, I will not tell you the exact price, but it was really expensive. Expensive for the local people, expensive for an European, and he was not really committed to lower the price. So it shows that he probably still have clients, or he would have other clients who were able or were willing to pay big money for these. According to his information, which he provided me before we arrested him, and then after, and when he was arrested, most of the body parts, which are skulls, sometimes hands, are sold to West Africa. They might serve as some voodoo or black magic rituals and others. But also this guy had connections to Europe and to Asia. So I also suspect that some educated, well-situated people would pay money to have a gorilla skull on the table. So I managed to document this particular guy. I filmed everything on the different cameras to be sure and to have some evidence for the court if needed. But finally, when the day came, the guy showed himself again, and he brought everything again for the pretended sale, and he was arrested red-handed by the Cameroonian officials, and the lawyers of Laga pushed hard so that he will be convicted to jail and for some and to some financial for some financial fine, which was pretty high. He got to pay like altogether some 8 million CFA, Central African francs. Unfortunately, the jail time was pretty short, 2 months only, while some other traffickers might end up in the jail for 1 or 2 or even 3 years in Cameroon, and between 2 and 5 years in the Republic of Congo, where I'm mainly active. And these are just some extractions from the Eagle Network, which I found on their internet, in their monthly or annual reports, showing that only a small, last year it was quite a significant proportion that of the traffickers arrested. There were 10% of them were linked with primate trade. In most cases, I would say apes. Few years before, it was a small proportion, but it still exists, and in the big number of traffickers, it's a pretty important number. And of course, you intercept only part of that, a small fraction of that. Now there is a short video without any sound, or maybe you hear the sound. If you always Anyway, but there is just a natural sound, so I will probably be able to go on with my talk. These are just some pictures which I wanted to show, showing the Western lowland gorillas. I was so lucky that when I visited the Dzanga-Sanga Reserve 8 years ago, it was in the middle of a period which was not really happy for local people, not very happy for the elephants. It was during the rule of the Seleka rebels, which invaded the country from the north. They threw over the government and expelled the president. And the local researchers were were pretty much on their own. There were no tourists, there were no international researchers, only local people from Central African Republic, from Cameroon. And they allowed me to spend several days with them, tracking a few habituated group of gorillas, including that leader Makumba and baby Sopo. These pictures are already from the Odzala-Kokua National Park, the biggest protected area in the Republic of Congo, showing gorillas on the mineral lake, like a salt lake in the middle of the rainforests, on the so-called bays, the natural clearings, like here, for example. And these are some of the rare places in the world where you can still see gorillas, chimpanzees, and elephants together at the same spot. Now, before I launch this video, please, can somebody tell me if the sound of the video is there or not? I still don't know it.
No.
Now we are not.
No, in the previous videos, have you heard the sound?
No.
Okay. So I will go on, because there is pretty much noise in this particular video. And now I will move from the wild to the captivity, and I will now talk a bit more about my collaboration with the Jane Goodall Institute. This is George. George is a chimpanzee baby which was seized by some authorities and activists in Angola, which is a neighbor country to Congo. There are no wild chimpanzees on the Angola mainland, or the main place in Angola, because it is south of the Congo River. There are some chimpanzees in the Cabinda exclave, but this one was probably a baby imported to Angola from the DRC. And since there was, and if I'm not wrong, since there is still no facility to handle seized or orphaned ape babies, it was the Congolese Jane Goodall Institute who attempted to get these few first chimpanzees from Angola, bring them to Congo, and try to incorporate them to their facility, and with the future goal of releasing them back to the wild, which is a plan ahead. And now this is just a first day of George in Congo. Actually, he arrived by airport. He spent one night in our place, and he was destroying our house. He spared this flower, which was quite emotional for me. He just destroyed everything else, but he left the flower. And he already behaved like an alpha, very dominant male, which he finally probably he finally leads a group of other orphan babies in the Jane Goodall Institute. So this is just my short experience of helping the Jane Goodall people, bringing that orphanage to Congo. Now, the Jane Goodall Institute in Congo, the Chimpunga Nature Reserve, is the biggest place within the Jane Goodall Institute with the most chimpanzees. There are something around 160 chimpanzees which are in human care, and the goal is to release those which are fit and able to be released back to the wild. The problem in Congo and in probably all of the Africa is that there are very few remaining forests which would be good to receive such such newcomers, because the chimpanzees, because of their territoriality, aggressivity, cannot be released one by one or by small groups, because they would in most cases be massacred by the local wild chimpanzees. So the Jane Goodall Institute tries to form a big group, like a really big group, and then release them together. And the second threat is, of course, the poaching, because there are only maybe there are none safe forests in the whole region which can be safe for those animals, which are less less scared of humans, and so on. So they have a really big challenge ahead, and hard times of finding such a good place. I hope that they will succeed. All right, and before I will move to the final part and talk more about our actual project, which also concerns chimpanzees, I will move for the last few minutes back to ivory and back to elephants, and I will describe our most recent ivory operation, which happened in Congo last year. And this is something which started by a WhatsApp communication with someone who offered someone chopsticks from ivory. I got in touch with the guy, and because it was mainly during the COVID restrictions, we were not really able to travel, and it was not so easy to go from Cameroon to Congo and to Chad. So we started the investigation in distance, and we tried to get more information about those sellers and organizers and so on. Finally, there was one central person in that network, and apart from that carved ivory, he also presented some raw ivory. So this is the forest elephant ivory, which is only cut in half because of the logistic and camouflage reasons. It looks black only on the surface, but indeed it's like a real ivory. That man, this is again that's a picture only a few minutes before the actual arrest. Unfortunately, he looks quite sympathetic, quite friendly. He was actually, but he's an ex-ranger. An ex-ranger in one of the Congolese national parks who was meant to protect elephants and others, but he was rather gathering contacts and knowledge, and then he was exploiting that when he stopped being a poacher ranger. So he also filmed me in the moment when I was trying to convince him to to contact some other people so that we can get more ivory, and of course so that we can learn more about his other contacts in his phone before the real interrogation. So this is just a few minutes of his freedom, a few last minutes of his freedom before the police came in, and there was arrestation of all of us, including myself, for security reasons. And then by exploiting our previous findings, our previous evidence, contact numbers, faces, addresses, and his own information, which he revealed in the interrogation, we succeeded again with the Eagle Network and with the local gendarmerie, which made a really wonderful work. 6 people in total. There were 6 people, including an active gendarme, an active military officer, and this ex-ranger. 3 others were civilian, but their network was really well organized, and they had of course access to ammunition, and then they had access to the airport and military vehicles and so on. The total seizure was more than 100 kilo of elephant ivory, which was all from the forest elephants. Yeah, and now I mentioned poaching as a main threat, but of course poaching doesn't appear from nowhere. There are some other factors which facilitate poaching. So number one, in Central Africa, definitely logging. This is the map of the Republic of Congo. The gray and red and pink areas are concessions which are attributed to corporations to log timber. I highlighted those in red for Chinese concessions and in pink for Malaysian and Singapore concessions. More than half of the attributed concessions in Congo belong to the Asian corporations. The main issue is that those corporations dwelling in Asia don't respect some regulations which we, at least some European companies, try or should respect. So the situation in those concessions in most cases look even worse than in other places. Fortunately, I mean, it's not about complete logging of the entire areas. It's selective logging. So there are like 1 to 2 big pieces of timber or 1 or 2 trees per hectare, which is usually extracted. But of course, this creates a huge network of roads, and those roads are used by other vehicles, or poachers use the vehicles of the logging company. As here, for instance, there is a local hunter, poacher, which we arrested in the vehicle with pangolins and primates. Another big problem is gold or other minerals. In Eastern DRC, as you surely know, there are other minerals which are used in the electronics, diamonds and gold. In the Republic of Congo and Cameroon, it's mainly about gold. There are also some different methods. It can be like artisanal, local gold mining. Sometimes they don't even use any energy. They use like really ancient methods of extracting golds. But even when using local methods, when you are numerous and you have time to do that, it might end up like that. This is a picture from the Dimonica Biosphere Reserve in the Congo. Like one of the highest protection available, unfortunately only on the paper. And there are literally thousands of people, men, youth and women, digging gold. And then of course other maybe hundreds of people doing other activities, because those people need to eat, they need to drink beer, they need to have sex. So there are, you know, bars, prostitutes, hunters, professional hunters who provide meat, and the rainforest is no more a rainforest. I don't actually know whether or not the Chinese, I mean, in this case, the Chinese or in general, like industrial gold mining is better, because they use machinery. As here, this was a Chinese company who logged out the few hectares of the forests, was doing the extraction activities for 1 year, sometimes even less than 1 year, and then they go away. So there is not such a steady or long-term presence of people. It's more condensed in time. But at the other hand, they use some other technologies, and in some cases they use like mercury, you know, which is very poisonous to extract the gold. So I don't know. Definitely it shouldn't happen in the biosphere reserve. And now I'm moving to the end of my presentation. Something which you might be more interested in is like a long-term monitoring, long-term service in the forest. We use collaborations with the local branch of WWF. We have collaborations with the Czech zoo in Liberec. We have collaborations with the Czech Life Science University in Prague and some other institutions. And since the COVID time, we collaborate on setting a pattern of several dozens of camera traps in the forests. We usually focus on areas out of the protected areas, because we would like to get more ideas about the movements of the big mammals, apes, and of course humans out of the reserves and national parks, so that we can work with the owners of the logging concessions and some other operators in the zone to identify the corridors, to identify the most biodiversity rich areas, to spare them. So a part of apes, and we have sometimes carnivores, which is always a feast, like here, the golden cat. You rarely see them alive. I never saw it alive. I saw it twice on the bushmeat market and several times on the camera traps. We discover poaching presence of elephants. This is my favorite guy, which I knew already before he lost his right tusk, an old male, which he maybe lost it naturally. We don't know. We have also evidence of very emotional behavior of elephants. This is just a screenshot from the video of two male elephants who are touching the skull, the lower jaw of an elephant. So we have also interesting behavioral observations. Like here, for instance, sometimes we discover elephants where we don't expect them. Some of them destroy our equipment, of course, like this guy at the end of the video, which you might find, you may find it on the YouTube or our Facebook of Safe Elephants. If you are into elephants, go ahead. This is the poto, the Periodicticus poto, the nocturnal primate, which I was already talking about. And now this is the last topic, which I wanted to share with you. And it is not a national park. It is not the most beautiful place in Africa, which I know, but it is very common situation, which you might know from other places in Africa. And therefore, it is very, I find it very important, very interesting to work on this, because it is something which you might replicate or which might be replicated to other rural areas. The situation is as it follows. This is the national road from nowhere to nowhere. This is a small village of 300 inhabitants. We have some personal bonds to this village, so that's why we've chosen to work here. The landscape of the village, it is in southern Congo, Brazzaville. It's a mosaic, natural mosaic of grasslands, some shrubs, and forests, mainly forests which are on the hills or along the streams, like a gallery forests. This is the peak of the dry season, which is pretty long in that area. So you see the big difference between the savanna and the forest fragments. And this is the place where I, after 10 years after my studies, I come back into the forest fragments and I find primates, specifically chimpanzees. This is a typical example of like slash and burn, shifting agriculture. Here you can see, still you can see this fire. You can see like a shadow of the tree, which is not a shadow actually. It's like ashes from the tree which was fallen, and he got completely burned, with no other use than fertilizing the soil for 1 or 2 or 3 years and then moving it farther. So this was the situation before we launched our project. So that you understand, the project is not purely conservation aimed. Of course, from my perspective, it is, because we definitely want to save and restore these fragments while using the grasslands for some agricultural production. I was talking that the poaching is a big problem because of the lack of other alternatives. So here, I'd like to focus on production of meat, domestic meat, mainly ostriches, but maybe some species of antelopes which breed well, but also some domestic animals like goats and others. So, but all of these activities will be moved from the forest to the savanna closer to the village, and we want to make sure that there will be no other trees felled or cut down, and that this is a picture from the past only. While the main motivation of those killing the forest was the space, there were some entrepreneurs who were also interested in charcoal. This is also a very big problem in certain areas of Africa and elsewhere. So since the launch of our project last year, or it's a year and a half from now, we completely banned any charcoal production. We also banned touching any of the big trees which you might still see behind. So of course we allow people to use the secondary growth which has already been degraded in the past, but gradually we want to show them and help them in using like even mechanical agriculture to labor or to be able to plow some plots of the savanna, plant plants or crops, use natural fertilizers from the goats and sheep in the villages, which is not being used today, and see some options how to produce food for people and for animals on the savannas. We also started some reforestation activities, now mainly along those degraded vicinity of the village. So we also use some not native species, like here moringa, for instance, which can be also useful for people. But our ultimate goal, of course, is to use those fast-growing and also fertilizing crops or trees as a base to further expand and prepare good soil, shadow or semi-shadow for original native tree species. We work here with local people from the village, from the community, with international volunteers, like here my friend from the Charles University in Prague, and with local experts, like the one guy on my left, which is an expert in forestry science in Congo. So we have a checklist of trees, which will be the base of our nursery to rehabilitate this forest. At the end of these videos, I will show you some aerial pictures and some maps. But here, this is the first video which really made us happy, because when we launched this project, there were only rumors of chimpanzees, and I was not really sure if it's really true or not. But then, 1.5 kilometers from the village, we got this video captured. As you see, we aimed at some small animals like rodents or birds, but finally there was a family of chimps. A youngster, probably he was afraid about the camera trap. So here we have a proof of 4. To date, and this is there is a bad dating on the. It is not from 2017. It's recent, from last year. So our only proof by now is at least 4 chimpanzees. But these people, these chimpanzees live in these type of fragments. Look at this. Not many trees left. It's to my surprise that those apes still survive in this type of habitat. So now, using camera traps, I think this is a picture. Using camera traps, we start to understand more about the movements of this group of chimpanzees. First, second, to find out more about if there are more individuals than only 4, which we know about. And we would like to know more, of course, about the connectivity on the landscape. We know that from the one side there is the main road and the villages, which is probably an obstacle, a barrier. But on the other side, there are beautiful mountains with beautiful forests. Probably not really rich in other animals anymore, because even in our fragments, those chimpanzees and the bushbuck antelopes are the only big mammals which still live there. The rest of the big mammals are already gone, including some Genon monkeys. So it's a really degraded forest. Unfortunately, just a few weeks before the launch of our project, there was the last kill of the chimpanzee. Apparently, it was a chimpanzee youngster, and it was only because of the children who told us that one of the guys killed a chimpanzee few weeks ago. So we were only able to find some of the bones from the skull, and which were just thrown out behind the house, and some smoked hands. So now there are some few other videos which we have from the beginning of this year. We see those lovely animals. Again, only 1.5 kilometers from the village, in one of the biggest remaining forest fragments, where they probably go for water. There are some dried out basin of the small stream, but there are definitely some holes in the soil or in the sand where chimpanzees still can fetch water. Yeah, as I said, apart from them, only rats, cane rats, porcupines, maybe some tree pangolins, but very rarely. and chimpanzees. So yeah, here it is. Sorry, this is the village here on the right side of the picture. You see the yellow patches, which are the remaining areas out of the previous gray patches, which were forests, maybe 20 years ago. So it's really, really scary. What we want to do, we want to use the savannas to produce the meat and crops, and completely, or at least as much as we can, reforest or let intact some natural rehabilitation of those forests. The big problem of the natural reforestation, of course, are the invasive plant species. We have the Chromolena odorata, we have the Lantana camara, which are fast-growing plants, which destroy any natural processes, unfortunately. So it will be up to us to plant and cut out or burn these invasive alien species. We would like to consider making some corridors between those forest fragments, because we know that chimpanzees historically used both of them, and according to some of our informants from the village, they still use even the fragment which is in the south, but they have to cross like nearly 2 kilometers of savanna, which might be dangerous, which might be stressful for them. So we will consider planting some belts of forests, or maybe in these cases it might be a mixture of native species and some fruit-bearing species, because I guess, but it would need further investigations. I guess that the food resources are really scarce in those forests. And of course, this is only the land of our village, or the village where we work with. Then there are neighbors, and there will be very vain efforts if we do something and then the village nearby kills our chimpanzees or totally destroy the forest. So of course we would like to expand and at least retain some of the forest fragments in the vicinity, at least for some migration movements. Then if I would go farther on the west, another 2 or 3 kilometers, there are the big mountains which have beautiful forests, but maybe I mentioned, we are still not aware, we have no information whether or not our chimpanzees go there to that forest, and I strongly suspect that not, but it's something to verify. Another small step which might be of no importance, but maybe it might the chimpanzees might find it useful. In the drying creek, we prepared some pools which will retain water for longer periods, because even here, as elsewhere in Africa, the climate change is a big problem for people, and in this case I would believe that even for chimpanzees, because these streams are not as rich in water as previously. So by providing them more water, rainwater and drinking water, might be useful for them. And these are just pictures from nearby areas. This is not the village, but areas which are nearby. It's a beautiful natural mosaic of grasslands and savannas and gallery forests and crystal clear forests sometimes, which is really rare to Africa because of the geologic features of this particular area, confluence with the normally colored water. So I show it to you so that you understand, the context, and maybe it inspires you to come one day to our place and discover more about, not only about this remaining group of chimpanzees, but also about the neighboring areas, regions, protected and unprotected areas, which are really of high interest. Congo is not a country where many researchers or tourists go. If so, they go to Nueva Balendoki or Zalacocoa, but the rest of the country is completely I would say unknown and undiscovered. So I would like to encourage you. If you are interested about the region and about
my personal journey and the problematics of elephants and poaching, I can recommend you my movie on the YouTube. It's called Here Be Elephants. It has 15 parts. So you have 3 hours of Central Africa and biking and poaching and arresting traffickers. So go ahead. You can also check out our website, which is not really up to date. We are all volunteers, but we try our best. And I will be glad to hear from you concerning your ideas about the conservation, about the research, and maybe about finding some other solutions for our particular village or other villages. I would like to thank you for your attention. I was a bit slightly longer, I guess. I hope that there is still somebody at the other side. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very